case of the Lisi family. This story takes place in Modo Visconti, a small town between Milan and Pavia, Italy, with a population of just 6,000. It is a classic, picturesque village where many seek a peaceful life away from the chaos of larger cities, making it a popular place to safely raise children. Typically, crime rates are low in such areas. However, even this peaceful Italian village can harbor horrors. On June 14, 2014, a horrific event unfolded here. Around 2 a.m., a local man ran into the street, screaming for help. He managed to reach a neighbor who had been awakened by the noise. In shock, he explained that his family had been attacked. He told the neighbor that their home had been robbed and everyone inside had been killed, while he had miraculously managed to escape. Appearing to be in a state of shock, he was unable to call emergency services himself, so the neighbors took it upon themselves to make the call and handed him the phone. When neighbors understood what had happened, they realized that the attackers had killed Lisi's wife, his 5-year-old daughter, and 1.5-year-old son. Lisi, 31 at the time of the tragedy, had been watching a football match between Italy and England with friends. When Lisi left his home, everything seemed peaceful. However, when he returned after the match, he was horrified to find his house covered in blood. First, he discovered the body of his wife, Catherine, then went upstairs and found the bodies of his children in their room. Despite his best efforts to save them, he was unable to. The dispatcher instructed Lisi to check on the victims and assist them, but Lisi outright refused to touch the bodies. The rescue service operator didn't find anything unusual in Lisi's behavior. He was panicking, shocked, crying, screaming, and speaking nonsensically, but his reactions were generally typical for someone in such a situation. Emergency services were dispatched to the scene before the police arrived. Meanwhile, Lisi called his father to talk about the incident. When the police arrived, he and his father were already meeting on the porch of the house. Doctors confirmed the deaths of 38-year-old Catherine and her 2 children. Police arrived at the scene around 4 a.m., where forensic experts were already examining the house for evidence. Initially, it was thought that a gang of robbers had broken in, especially since they had attacked another family a year earlier with knives and had not been caught. However, police quickly ruled out the robbery theory because there were no signs of forced entry or theft. Even a wallet containing money, which was left in plain sight, had not been disturbed. It seemed unlikely that the intruders could have entered and exited the house without leaving a trace unless they were familiar with the victims. The house was unusually clean, with hardly any bloodstains that should have been there after an attack. It raised concerns that the criminal had cleaned the entire house. With suspicion naturally falling on Lisi, statistics show that the people closest to a victim are often the ones who commit the crime. Lisi had fresh, deep cuts on his hands that he couldn't explain. He also discovered the lifeless bodies of his family members, which were already cold, suggesting they had been murdered hours before he went to see his friends. The police observed that he was acting oddly. Lisi struggled to show emotions. He couldn't cry, no matter how hard he tried. He seemed very anxious, glancing around nervously. Since he couldn't produce tears, he stood there in silence, doing nothing, even though his entire family had been brutally killed. It appeared as if he didn't care at all. This behavior aroused suspicion, and as police began questioning him, Lisi's fears became clear. He began pacing the room, scratching his hands, and banging on furniture. While this could have been a sign of stress and distress, police suspected something much darker. Doctors recommended treatment for Lisi's arm wound. Later, he was asked to strip down for examination. When he removed his shirt, police discovered drops of blood on his lower back, but his clothes were clean. The police spoke to the neighbors, who reported strange noises and a woman's screams at around 11 p.m., just before Lisi left the house. However, the noises quickly disappeared, and the neighbors did not think to call the police. Had they acted sooner, it could have saved the children's lives, as they did not die immediately but bled out over a long period of time. The police observed that the mess in Lisi's house was unusual for a typical robbery. Usually, thieves leave items scattered and broken, but in Lisi's case, many things were untouched and arranged neatly, as if someone had staged it. This raised suspicions about Lizzy's involvement in the triple murder. Experienced police pieced together the evidence like a puzzle and brought Lizzy in for questioning. During the interrogation, Lizzy acted unusually. Instead of responding to questions, he requested pizza, sweets, and soda. He denied any connection to the crime and stuck to his version of events. After his arrest, Lizzy was locked in a cell, where he promptly fell asleep. The next day, he remained calm and even carefree, which was evident in his demeanor. The police decided to investigate Lizzy's colleagues, who revealed that he had recently developed strong feelings for an attractive girl named Maria. Lizzy became increasingly focused on Maria and made the firm decision to end his relationship with Catherine. During his interrogation, Lizzy tried to create an illusion of love and devotion for Catherine. The police were concerned about his mental health. They decided to manipulate his emotions. The police informed Lizzy that his new colleagues despised him even more after the deaths of his wife and child, and this tactic worked. It threw Lizzy off balance. He lost his temper and exploded in anger. 20 minutes later, he began confessing, after which Lizzy was formally charged with murder. The police began gathering information about his family in preparation for the trial. Lizzy was born in Kazara as the first child in the family and later had a younger brother. Their father was a strict and demanding man, clearly favoring his youngest son over Lizzy, who was often scolded. Lizzy felt deeply hurt by this treatment and never found the courage to confront his father. He followed his orders without question, and if he was in a bad mood, Lizzy would immediately retreat, knowing that it could lead to more trouble. During his teenage years, Lizzy grew fed up with what he had been through as a young man. By the age of 20, he began to show his true character and no longer wanted to hide his feelings or follow his father's orders. At school, he faced bullying and was influenced by his family's expectations, but he persisted in trying to make people happy. This desire to please became a painful struggle, as Lizzy often put the needs of others before his own. Lizzy faced psychological issues but avoided addressing them, instead choosing to let events unfold naturally. Occasionally, Lizzy would engage in arguments, but he was easily overpowered by others. To prevent worsening the situation, he believed he was making the right choice by avoiding any conflict. He felt certain that he would lose in any confrontation, so he chose to remain silent and endure everything. He had been conditioned to value others' opinions over his own. He would laugh when others laughed and felt sad when they were sad. Lizzy always tried to present himself well to avoid criticism about his appearance. He started going to the gym to fit in more socially. He was terrified of social rejection, but he hid his insecurities by portraying himself as altruistic and helpful to others. Lizzy's father forced him to study economics at university, leaving him with no other choice. He pursued this path and graduated at 21, securing a consulting job at a large firm in Milan. However, he did not enjoy the job. Despite his dissatisfaction, he stayed in the job due to the high salary and good working conditions. He spent all his free time focused on his career, and while it seemed he was successful, he still did not find fulfillment in it. Feeling the pressure from those around him, including friends who constantly asked when he would find a girlfriend and get married, Lizzy began searching for a wife. After 2 years of unsuccessful dating, he finally met his future wife, Catherine. Lizzy, 23, and Catherine, 30. Their age difference didn't seem to pose any problems. She was more mature and experienced, often guiding him through their relationship. Catherine saw their relationship as the perfect foundation for starting a family. Catherine was determined and possessed a strong personality that made her difficult to manipulate. She had been independent since she was a child. By the age of 20, Catherine supported herself. Although she seemed uncertain about her direction, she was still full of energy. She aspired to pursue acting and further her education. Catherine devoted all her free time to her passion. In contrast to Lizzy, the difference between her and Lizzy was clear. Catherine shared a relationship with her father based on mutual understanding and respect, while Lizzy shared very little with his father. While Catherine was socially active, Lizzy was rather introverted. She became an insurance agent at a company in Modo Visconti. She had a successful career and was highly regarded at work. Catherine chose to stay in this small town because it made her feel comfortable. Her family and friends lived nearby, and she found everything she needed in life without any problems. Catherine loved musicals and performed at the Modo Visconti Oratory. During this time, she also developed a love for public speaking, and it was here that she met her future husband, Lizzie. Catherine was attracted to him immediately, but their initial meeting did not work out because he was too shy. They met again in February 2014. At the time, Catherine was performing on stage, and Lizzie seemed to come alive when he looked at her. His friends noticed a change in him. His usually indifferent expression lit up with excitement. It was love. Before this meeting, Lizzie had never been in a serious relationship, but he seemed ready to start a family. They started dating, and their relationship quickly developed. A few months later, when things became more serious, they introduced each other to Catherine's parents. Catherine's family had mixed feelings about her choice of partner. They had hoped for someone more experienced and outgoing. However, her parents ultimately supported her decision. Catherine felt that Lizzie was the perfect person to start a family with. Lizzie's family was very supportive of his choice. They liked Catherine because she was smart, cheerful, energetic, determined, and capable of taking care of him. His father especially appreciated these qualities, which made Lizzie happy. The father was very happy that his son finally found a girlfriend. His father gifted the couple a house. It was a small but cozy place in the countryside, perfect for starting their family life together. Soon after, the couple got married, and later they welcomed children. However, this story does not have a happy ending. After their marriage, Lizzie's true nature began to emerge in an unusual way. He began to cheat on his wife. His good looks made it easy for him to meet new women without feeling guilty. At the time, Catherine was completely unaware of his affair, as he worked in Milan, far from their family home. Lizzie had affairs with many different women and became adept at being charming and fun, making many of them want to pursue a serious relationship with him. And as soon as the idea of a serious relationship was mentioned, he would end things with his mistress and quickly start seeing someone new. He never revealed to any of them that he was married and had children. He pursued attractive women, often initiating relationships with female colleagues at work. He showed little regard for privacy during his extramarital activities in Milan. His reckless lifestyle was well known to many of his friends and acquaintances. After 7 years of marriage, Catherine welcomed her second child. However, in February 2009, she discovered that Lizzie had been unfaithful and had been acting recklessly in town. Despite this betrayal, Catherine was determined to keep her family together and did her best to strengthen her relationship with her husband. Although there were signs that Lizzie had considered divorce several times, she repeatedly urged him to stay for the sake of the children. In fact, Lizzie cheated on her the first time before the wedding. Just a week before their wedding, while Catherine was volunteering at the Red Cross, Lizzie went out with friends to a strip club, celebrating a bachelor party. During this outing, a woman showed interest in him, and his friends encouraged him to spend the night with her as a last fun before marriage. He finally agreed. The next day, he confessed to Catherine that he enjoyed being single and admitted that he was not ready for marriage or a serious relationship. Heartbroken, Catherine packed her things and moved in with her parents. However, the next day, Lizzie returned, apologized to her and her family, and begged her to come back. Catherine forgave him, and they eventually married. Friends say he loved spending time with his children and playing with them, but he never showed affection. Those who knew him never saw him kiss or hug his son and daughter. His life was filled with lies that were obvious to both him and those around him. When a new employee joined the company where Lizzie worked, he and the girl started a relationship. But the girl did not want to be the reason for the breakup, especially because it would leave the two young children without a father. Meanwhile, Lizzie was haunted by his unrequited love. This frustration led him to come up with a dark plan. Despite the objections of his colleagues, Lizzie decided to end his marriage to Catherine. However, he was too afraid to approach his wife and discuss it, fearing that another conflict would arise and complicate things even more. He knew that he would not be able to resist her pleas to stay together for the sake of the children. Therefore, Lizzie believed that using a knife would be the solution to his problems. Police discovered relevant search queries in his browser. Initially, Lizzie was looking for a divorce lawyer and also looking for a way to end his relationship quickly without professional help. Lizzie then began searching for knife murder methods. This led him to a news story about a knife robbery that had occurred in their neighborhood a year earlier, which sparked the idea of staging a robbery to throw the investigation off course. On June 14, 2014, Lizzie woke up with the intention of killing his entire family. It had been only a week since Lizzie had started searching online for ways to kill his loved ones, and he had finally decided to carry out the horrific act. Throughout the day, he maintained the facade of a devoted family man. It was a typical day for the couple with children. They went shopping together, went to a store to project an image of a happy relationship, and enjoyed family activities. It seemed like he had planned the perfect farewell weekend for them. In the evening, Catherine prepared a delicious dinner, and they enjoyed it together. Afterwards, Lizzie planned to visit friends to watch the football match between Italy and England. He chose this date and event as the perfect alibi. Lizzie staged a massacre. Many people would be out watching the match at parties and bars, making it the perfect time to stage the robbery. After dinner, the couple put the children to bed. Lizzie said goodnight to them. The couple then had sex in the living room. Around 11 p.m., Lizzie told his wife that he was going to visit friends. Instead of getting dressed, he went into the kitchen in just his underwear and grabbed the largest knife in the house. He returned to the living room where Catherine was watching TV and talking to him. Lizzie then approached her from behind and stabbed her in the neck, thinking that Catherine would die instantly. However, she got up and ran away. After a few steps, he caught up with her and continued stabbing her repeatedly without stopping. After stabbing Catherine 5 times deep into her chest and abdomen until she showed no signs of life, he then went into his eldest daughter's room. Despite the noise and the slightly open door, she was still fast asleep. He approached her and stabbed her once in the neck. Next, Lizzie entered the room of their second child, who was 20 months old at the time. Like his sister, the little boy slept soundly. The little boy also died from a stab wound to the neck. However, Lizzie's plan was not over yet. He went down to the basement where the bathroom was located. There, he showered to wash away any evidence of the triple murder and got dressed. Unfortunately for him, he made a mistake. He was wearing the same underwear he had worn to kill his children and wife. Lizzie cleaned up the house and staged a robbery. He threw things around the house, threw a knife down the drain, and then calmly went to meet his friends to watch a long-awaited match as if nothing had happened. When his friends later learned of the murder, they were shocked, not only because Lizzie's image as a perfect husband and father had been shattered, but also because of his calm and nonchalant attitude while watching the match. He clearly showed no concern or remorse for his actions. To add to his alibi, he sent several messages to Catherine discussing the game score. At 2 a.m., Lizzie returned to the crime scene, acting as if it were a normal day. He parked his car in the garage, changed into his indoor shoes, and went into the kitchen. There, he saw the chaos he had created and even recorded a short video. In the video, he claimed that he had come home to find a robbery had taken place. In the video, he enters the living room and finds his wife lying in a pool of blood. In shock, he screams and runs outside to get help. However, he does not go upstairs to check on the children. Normally, an innocent person would try to help a loved one, check their pulse, or make sure the children are okay. Instead, Lizzie avoids approaching his wife and children, which raises suspicions against him in court. Lizzie calmly explained his reasons for his actions. When asked why he did not divorce his wife to protect her and the children, he said that after the divorce, he would have to pay child support. He believed that his new partner, Maria, would not accept them, creating more complications. He felt that having his daughter and son around would be a burden. In addition, he did not want to deal with the division of their joint assets. Therefore, he decided to completely free himself from these responsibilities. The investigation into Lizzie's family murders was straightforward. He had confessed, his motive was clear, and the evidence was solid. The main issue in the trial was to determine whether his actions were intentional. His online search history suggested they were. A week later, while awaiting trial, Lizzie was taken for a psychological evaluation. It was possible that he may not have been fully aware of his actions. Experts determined that Lizzie was sane and fit to stand trial. During the trial, he chose not to have a lawyer, believing that fighting for his freedom was unnecessary. Lizzie was sentenced to life imprisonment, which he initially accepted. However, after starting his sentence, his feelings may have shifted. He declined legal representation and filed an appeal, but soon after, he sent another letter withdrawing the appeal and stating that he believed the sentence was fair. Although it may seem odd, Lizzie's refusal was not surprising. Throughout his life, he had never been one to fight for anything. Now, in prison, he found himself in an environment where he didn't have to make decisions or strive for anything. He could simply be passive and quiet. Prisoners followed a daily routine and adhered to specific rules, which seemed to suit Lizzie well. In Lizzie's trial, the judge found Lizzie guilty of triple murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. He has been in prison for over 4 years now. Lizzie is considered a model prisoner. His cellmates and guards say that he seems genuinely remorseful for his actions. Helen Brzezinski was a 20-year-old woman from Massachusetts. She was studying at Wheaton College, also in Massachusetts. In January 1980, she went to Colorado and started working as an intern for a Denver radio station. She was really just starting her life. Helen was living with her friend at her aunt's house in Englewood. On January 16, 1980, Helen went to work. After work, she took the bus as usual. She was not seen again after leaving the bus station. Helen's aunt got worried when she did not arrive home and reported her missing. It did not take long for the police to find her. Her body was found the next day in a field. She had been stabbed. Investigators believed that she was abducted right after she left the bus station. DNA from a male was found at the crime scene. Unfortunately, in 1980, DNA technology was not very advanced and they could not identify the man. They did, however, store the DNA so they could one day use it again when DNA technology advanced. Helen did not know many people in the area, since she had only lived there for 2 weeks and did not have any known enemies. Investigators did not receive many leads, and the case went cold. In 1998, the DNA was uploaded to a database after a DNA profile could be created, but it did not match anyone. In 2017, her case was reopened, and investigators tried again to solve it. They uploaded the DNA to GDmatch.com and found a couple of potential family members of the suspect. One of the family members they came across was Rob Deal. Rob was very eager to help. He explained his entire family tree as best he could and gave them a sample of his DNA. The investigators then used the help of CC Moore and Parabon Nanolabs to find a family member who would give them an exact match. In December 2019, they had narrowed it down to James Curtis Clanton. He was a very distant cousin of Rob. James was a truck driver living in Lake Butler. Investigators saw that he had a criminal history and found that he was on parole for an assault in Arkansas after serving 4 years in prison in the 1980s. He was released to live in a Denver home of a former counselor who offered to help him. This meant that he was in the area when Helen was killed and that he had a violent history. Investigators followed James for a few weeks. They retrieved a beer mug he was drinking from at a bar. The DNA was tested and it was an exact match. Early in 2020, James was arrested, but investigators are now also looking into other possible crimes he could be responsible for. Helen's sister, Janet Johnson, is really the only living close relative, and she was ecstatic to hear the news of the arrest. Janet, now 70 years old, said, "I want people to know what a special person Helen was. She was my best friend, and she had a bright future ahead of her." On May 25, 1981, the body of a woman was found at a low river crossing in Pulaski County, Missouri. An autopsy revealed that the woman had been strangled. It was determined that she was Caucasian and had dark hair. It was estimated that she was anywhere from 25 to 40 years old. She was named the Pulaski County Jane Doe and was buried at the Waynesville Cemetery. Investigators followed a lot of leads, but it all led nowhere, and the case would go cold for many years. In 2015, her remains were exhumed in hopes of getting DNA evidence from her body. In April 2019, the Doe and Othram Project got involved. They then tried to find relatives of the victim using her DNA. In December 2019, they reached a man in Alexandria, Virginia, who they believed was the brother of the victim. He said that he did have a sister and had lost contact with his family in the early 1980s. He gave them his DNA sample. The DNA analysis of the two samples found that the man and the victim were 19.4 million times more likely to be biological siblings than unrelated. This now meant that the Pulaski County Jane Doe was finally identified as Karen K. Nippers on May 25th. She was identified exactly 40 years after her body was found on that day. An investigation to find the person who took Karen's life is still ongoing. Anyone with information is asked to call Pulaski County Sheriff's Detective DJ Reno at his number. It is known that Karen was 32 years old when her life was taken and that she was reported missing from St. Louis, Missouri. On February 25, 1957, a boy's body was found wrapped in a blanket in a box. The discovery was made in the woods in Fox Chase, Philadelphia. An autopsy revealed that the boy had passed away due to blunt force trauma. It was estimated that he was between 4 and 6 years old. He was described as a Caucasian boy and stood at 40 inches tall. He had surgical scars on his ankle and groin. There was also an owl-shaped scar under his chin. It appeared as if he had recently had a haircut, as there were some clumps of hair in the box. A young man made the discovery of the boy when he was checking his traps. He feared that the police would confiscate his traps, so he did not tell anyone what he found. A few days later, another young man saw a rabbit running into the woods. He followed it and then came across the body of the boy. He did not want to contact the police, as he felt that he would be a suspect in the case. He did contact them, however, a day after he made the discovery. Investigators took fingerprints from the boy in the box. They believed that they would be able to identify him quickly, but that was not the case. They found no matches for the fingerprints, and no one came forward with any useful information. Close to the crime scene, a man's blue cap was found, as well as a child's scarf and a man's white handkerchief. All of these clues would lead nowhere. The case soon became known as The Boy in the Box and America's Unknown Child. It attracted a lot of media attention. Investigators also looked at the box for any clues. They discovered that it once contained a bassinet sold by J.C. Penney. They were unable to find the owner of the box. The same could be said for the blanket that the boy was found in. As you can imagine, there are a lot of theories regarding this case. We'll only be discussing a few. A man by the name of Remington Bristow spent thousands of hours investigating this case. He found a foster home that was located approximately 1.5 miles from the site of the body. Remington attended an estate sale at a foster home. There, he found a bassinet similar to the one made by J.C. Penney. He also found blankets on a clothesline that were similar to the one in which the boy's body had been wrapped. Remington believed that the boy belonged to the stepdaughter of the man who owned the foster home. Investigators did question the foster family but were not able to find definite links between them and the boy in the box. In 2002, a woman who we only know as Martha, or M, came forward and told investigators an incredible story. She said that her mother purchased the boy from his biological parents in the summer of 1954. The boy was subjected to extreme physical abuse for 2.5 years. One evening at dinner, the boy vomited up his meal of baked beans and was given a severe beating. His head was slammed against the floor. The boy wasn't given a bath, and during it, he passed away. Martha's mother then cut the boy's long hair to conceal his identity. The two women then dumped his body in the Fox Chase area. The details Martha gave matched information known only to investigators. There were baked beans in the boy's stomach, and his fingers were water-wrinkled. Investigators were unable to verify her story. The boy in the box was buried at Ivy Hill Cemetery in Cedar Brook, Philadelphia. His headstone has the words "America's Unknown Child" on it. People often decorate it with flowers and stuffed animals. The case has been featured on a lot of different shows, such as America's Most Wanted, Cold Case, CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, and Law and Order, Special Victims Unit. The Ghoul Boys also featured it on Season 2 of BuzzFeed Unsolved in 2017. All Hail the Watcher. In 2016, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released a forensic facial reconstruction of the boy. In 2019, the boy's remains were exhumed. They were able to retrieve DNA which was sent to a lab in Europe. In 2021, it allowed them to create a DNA profile. A lot of DNA companies are now working to find family members of the boy using genetic genealogy so they can identify him. The case of Lori Slosinski. Lori Slosinski was born on September 21, 1981 to her parents, Casey and Arlene Slosinski. With her blue eyes and blonde hair, Lori was cherished by her family, including her older brother, Paul. The Slosinski family originally hailed from New York State but moved to the rural Alabama farmland near Auburn when Lori was 13 years old. Growing up in the countryside, Lori developed a strong love for animals. Her friends described her as beautiful, and she enjoyed spending time with them, watching movies, riding her bicycle, and playing video games. Alongside her enjoyment of life, she was quite dedicated to her studies, and her family did their best to support her. After graduating from high school, Lori decided to attend Auburn University, where she chose to major in psychology and minor in criminology. To help her transition to college life, her parents purchased a mobile home for her to live in off-campus, situated in a well-kept trailer park popular among students. She lived there with her cherished dog, Peanut, a Yorkshire Terrier. Lori maintained a strong relationship with her family, with her mother calling her every day to see how she was doing. In February 2005, she graduated with honors from Auburn University. Shortly after, she started working at the East Alabama Mental Health Center while continuing to live in the trailer park. She also planned to pursue a master's degree in psychology in the near future. Lori's family was proud of her accomplishments, unaware of the trouble that was on the horizon. On June 10, 2006, 24-year-old Lori planned a girls' night at her best friend Lindsey Braun's house. They intended to have drinks and watch a movie. Lori met Lindsey in their junior year at Auburn University, and they quickly became friends due to Lori's sweet and outgoing personality. Their friendship strengthened further when they both started working at the same mental health facility after graduation. Around 6:30 p.m. on June 10th, Lori called Lindsey to say she was stopping at the store before heading to her house for movie night. Unfortunately, she never arrived. Lindsey became concerned when she didn't hear from Lori that night or the next day. She called Lori multiple times and left messages on her answering machine but received no response. When Lori failed to show up for work on Monday, June 12th, Lindsey became very worried. It was unusual for Lori to miss work without notifying anyone. After Lori missed work again on Tuesday, June 13th, Lindsey and another coworker decided to check on her at home. When they arrived at Lori's trailer, Lindsey noticed that Lori was not there. The door was unlocked, and the air conditioning was running, which was unexpected. Inside, Lindsey saw that Lori's dog, Peanut, was in his crate. He appeared healthy and content, suggesting that someone had been taking care of him. Remarkably, his crate was clean, despite Lori being missing for several days. Lindsey sensed something was wrong, as it was unusual for Lori to leave her pet unattended. She recalled that Lori had placed 3 rugs on her kitchen floor because the dog wouldn't walk on the tile. However, those rugs were now missing, as well as the outside trash can. Later that day, June 13, 2006, Lori's mother, Arlene, received a call from her workplace about Lori missing work for 2 consecutive days. Arlene tried calling Lori but couldn't reach her. Concerned for her daughter's safety, Arlene hurried to Auburn after informing her husband, Casey, about Lori's disappearance. When she arrived, Arlene entered Lori's trailer and noticed something was off. The door was slightly open, and Lori's bed was neatly made, but Lori was nowhere to be found. Her car was also missing. Upon further inspection, Arlene saw that several items were missing. Lori's kitchen rugs, a pillow from her couch, a Galileo thermometer, a green trash can that Lori used for her rake and shovel, and the phone cord for her landline. A sense of alarm started to rise in Arlene as she understood that something terrible had happened. She officially reported her daughter missing but still held out hope that she would return. The police began their investigation and searched Lori's trailer home. While they didn't find any clear evidence pointing to a suspect, they did see signs of a struggle and scuff marks on the wall. On the bedsheet, they discovered semen and found traces of blood on the doorknob. A coat hanger and a single golden hoop earring were also collected from the scene. On June 10, 2006, police obtained surveillance footage showing Lori at an Alabama Walmart, marking the last confirmed sighting of her. After this, no one knew what had happened to her. Later that afternoon, Arlene received a phone call from one of Lori's friends, a 25-year-old named Daryl Richard Ennis, commonly known as Rick. He claimed he had seen Lori on the day she went missing and suggested that she might have gone off to make a drug deal. Lori had met Daryl at the bowling alley where he worked and often spent time there while she was a student. Arlene recognized Daryl because Lori had invited him to celebrate Christmas with their family in February 2005, feeling sorry for him since he had no family of his own. However, Arlene found it hard to believe Daryl's story. Despite Lori's friendship with him, she was convinced her daughter would never be involved in drug dealing. Arlene suspected that Daryl was lying but had no idea why he would make such a claim. Daryl provided the police with information about Lori's disappearance, but before they could act on it, a shocking discovery occurred. On June 14, 2006, just 4 days after Lori went missing, her car was discovered fully engulfed in flames near the bowling alley where Daryl had previously worked. This shifted the investigation from a missing persons case to a potential homicide. Investigators noted that the fire destroyed any evidence that might have been in the car, but Lori was not inside when it burned. Nearby, a hand-rolled cigarette was found on the ground, along with a gas can located in the woods. This incident deeply distressed Lori's family, leading them to believe that something terrible had happened to her. The only lead they had at the time was the information provided to Arlene. When Daryl was questioned, he repeated the same story he had told Arlene but added more details. He stated that he and Lori had grown marijuana together and suggested that she might have gone off to sell her portion of it. He also mentioned that Lori could have been involved with some dangerous people. The police searched Lori's trailer, but despite a thorough investigation, they found no evidence of her dealing drugs. During the interview, investigators noticed several scratches on Daryl's hands and arms, which he said were from his dog. Investigators uncovered troubling information from Lori's friend, Lindsay. During their last phone conversation on the day Lori disappeared, Lindsay heard Daryl speaking in the background. Since Daryl was a friend of Lori's, Lindsay didn't think much of it at the time. When Lindsay texted him to ask about Lori's whereabouts, he replied that Lori was fine when he left her. Lindsay also told investigators that before Lori went missing, she had mentioned that he had written her a love letter, but she did not feel the same way. Lori had expressed to Lindsay that she was not romantically interested in Daryl and intended to discuss this with him. Investigators later learned that Daryl had informed his friends about his letter and Lori's rejection. When police re-interviewed him to confront him with new information from Lindsay, he admitted to meeting her just hours before Lori disappeared. He maintained that Lori was in good spirits and was getting ready to go to the store when he left her house. However, detectives identified several inconsistencies in his story, which led them to consider Daryl their main suspect. Their suspicion intensified after searching his car, where they found several significant items, including a knife, cleaning supplies, and handcuffs. Investigators started digging into Daryl's past to find more evidence, but they were unprepared for the shocking discoveries. They uncovered that Daryl, at just 12 years old, had murdered his mother and stepfather. On March 3, 1993, only 10 months after their marriage, Daryl killed his mother, a well-liked churchgoer, by first shooting her in the face and then beating her to death with a baseball bat in their trailer in North Montgomery, Alabama. His stepfather, Eddie Joe Flowers, suffered the same fate when Daryl shot him in the face with a shotgun upon his return from work. After the murders, Daryl drove the family car and crashed it into a fence along the highway. Alabama State Trooper John Clark found Daryl walking on the road. When asked about his parents, Daryl admitted that he had killed them. During a search of the backpack he was carrying, Detective Clark discovered a kitchen knife and ammunition for both a 12-gauge shotgun and a .22 caliber firearm. When questioned about his motives, the emotionless 12-year-old stated that he was angry because his parents planned to move and he didn't want to leave his school. Investigators believe that Daryl lived with his parents' bodies while still attending school. He also confessed that he intended to kill his 3 stepsisters, which shocked the investigators. Although his murders were horrific, he was too young to be tried as an adult. As a minor, he received a 9-year prison sentence for the double murder. After his release, he moved to Auburn, where he met Lori Slosinski. When Lori went missing, Daryl became the main suspect. However, despite his criminal history and the abundance of circumstantial evidence, authorities could not charge him with Lori's murder without her body or any direct evidence linking him to the crime. A few weeks after being interviewed by detectives, he left Auburn and eventually settled in Huntsville, Alabama, in February 2007. By that time, Lori's case had grown cold. After moving to Huntsville, Daryl quickly moved in with a roommate named Abram. Abram noticed that Daryl had brought kitchen rugs with him, which he said were a gift from someone. Daryl also mentioned to Abram that he was in love with a woman from Auburn who had mysteriously disappeared, but he did not reveal her name. Abram thought these conversations were normal until he discovered his troubling past. This prompted him to ask Daryl to leave immediately. When Abram returned to his apartment, he found it in complete disarray. The police later recovered the rugs, and one of them tested positive for Daryl's blood. Abram also recalled seeing a Galileo thermometer in Daryl's room before he moved in, which was the same type that was missing from Lori's home. Unfortunately, the police were still unable to connect Daryl to Lori's murder, as the main suspect remained unidentified. The case stayed unresolved, leaving Lori's heartbroken family searching for answers for years. For many years, there were no developments in the case. Then, in 2016, Mark Whitaker, a special agent with the Alabama State Bureau of Investigation, established a cold case unit to re-examine Lori's disappearance. He worked with his longtime partner, Agent J.W. Barnes. Lori's case was their first focus. They revisited the evidence, sent some items to forensic labs for testing, and conducted multiple interviews. As they reviewed the evidence, Daryl became their primary suspect. Agent Mark was aware of Daryl's past and felt strongly that he had harmed Lori, but he struggled to find enough evidence or a body to prove his guilt. In an unexpected turn of events, Agent J.W. Barnes, who is Agent Mark's partner, discovered a crucial piece of evidence while reviewing old files. He found an unopened report in an envelope that had been untouched for 10 years. After Lori disappeared in 2006, the police collected evidence from her trailer, but no one followed up until the results were finally analyzed. The analysis revealed that semen found on Lori's bedsheet and blood on the inside of the front door matched the DNA of Daryl Ennis. With this evidence, investigators were able to build a strong case against him, leading to an indictment in 2018. At that time, Daryl was happily engaged to a school librarian named Elena Atkinson and was living in Pilot, Virginia, where he worked for a company that designed and built portable living structures called yurts. On August 6, 2018, which was his 38th birthday, not 30, based on his birth year implied by his age in 2006, Daryl Ennis was arrested by a U.S. Marshals Task Force 12 years after Lori Slosinski disappeared from Auburn. While Lori's family felt relieved, Daryl's fiancée and co-workers were taken aback by the news. He faced 2 counts of capital murder. The trial finally started on April 1, 2022. The prosecution presented evidence suggesting Daryl's involvement in the crime, including a cigarette but found in Lori's bedsheet that contained his DNA. In response, the defense claimed that police might have taken the cigarette from Daryl's home and planted it at the scene. They also attempted to undermine Lori's character, suggesting she was a drug dealer to account for his DNA being on the bedsheet. Daryl claimed he had consensual sex with Lori before she disappeared, implying that they were still intimate despite her rejecting him. However, his account lacked credibility, especially after two witnesses provided shocking information. One former coworker from Alabama, Jeremy Brooks, reported that on June 9, 2006, just one day before Lori's mysterious disappearance, he received a call from Daryl. He asked Jeremy if he could bring him gas and if he could keep the gas tank. Jeremy refused and recounted. He said he had run out of gas and wanted me to help him. Later, after police discovered Lori's burned car, they found a gas can that matched the description of a can missing from the bowling alley where Daryl worked. Terry Booth, a former coworker from South Carolina, shared a disturbing experience she had with Daryl years earlier. She recalled asking him why he had moved from Auburn, to which he responded that he needed to get rid of a body. At the time, Terry believed he was joking, but Daryl's later arrest for the murder of Lori changed her perspective. Despite Daryl consistently denying the allegations and asserting his innocence, the jury reached a guilty verdict after 2 days of deliberation. He was initially facing the death penalty. However, the district attorney decided to remove that option after consulting with Arlene. Arlene expressed that agreeing to a life sentence without parole for Daryl would spare her from lengthy appeals while ensuring he would remain incarcerated permanently. On April 14, 2022, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and is currently held at the William E. Donaldson Correctional Facility in Bessemer, Alabama. For Arlene, this verdict brought mixed emotions. With tears in her eyes, she expressed that it forced her to confront the painful reality that Lori would never return home, a hope she had clung to in her heart. In reflecting on Lori Slosinski's tragic story, it's impossible to ignore the heart-wrenching details that unfolded throughout her case. From her vibrant personality and promising future to the chilling revelations of Daryl Ennis's past, every twist and turn serves as a reminder of the fragility of life. The love between Lori and her family, especially her mother Arlene, paints a poignant picture of loss and longing for closure. The perseverance of investigators and the eventual breakthrough in the cold case remind us that justice, though sometimes delayed, can still prevail. As we honor Lori's memory, we recognize the profound impact her life and disappearance have had on all who knew her, as well as the vital importance of safeguarding our communities from those with dark histories. Tracy Lynn Hammerberg was born on March 7, 1966 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. During her childhood, her family moved to Saukville, Wisconsin. She attended Port Washington High School. On December 15, 1984, 18-year-old Tracy was babysitting at a house in Saukville. Thereafter, she walked to a grocery store to meet her friends. Tracy and her friends then drove to Quate's Tavern in Port Washington. Then she and her friends went to party in Grafton, Wisconsin. They played a beer drinking game and smoked weed. After midnight, Tracy left to walk home. The walk was about 4 miles. Tracy never made it home. Her body was found dumped on a snowy driveway on Maple Road in Grafton. She had head injuries and had been assaulted. More than 400 men were eliminated as suspects, using DNA testing. In March of 2019, investigators made use of genetic genealogy to absolve the case. They were able to create a DNA profile from skin that was found under Tracy's fingernails that belonged to an unknown man. The Los Angeles Federal Bureau of Investigation also helped out. Finally, in August 2019, they were able to confirm at Philip Cross to Tracy's life. Philip was a Wisconsin man who passed away in 2012. He was 21 years old at the time of the crime. Those who knew Philip said that he was abusive and aggressive towards others. Tanya Van Kellenborg was born on March 7, 1969 in British Columbia, Canada. In 1987, 18-year-old Tanya met 20-year-old J. Roland Cook, who was also from British Columbia. The two of them started dating. By November, the two of them had been in relationship for about 6 months. On November 18th, Jay and Tanya lived in his father's bronze 1977 Ford Club van. They left for an overnight trip to Seattle, Washington. Their plan was to buy parts for Jay's father's business. It was their first trip together, and they planned a romantic weekend. They took a 4 p.m. car ferry to Port Angeles, Washington. After disembarking from the ferry, they drove south into Hoodsport around 8 p.m. After that, they drove past Allen, most likely on their way to Bremerton, Washington. It is believed that they then boarded another car ferry that went from Bremerton to downtown Seattle. And Tanya were supposed to make it back home on November 19th, but they did not. On November 20th, they were reported missing. 4 days later, on November 24th, Tanya's body was found on a side of a road near Algar in Skagit County, Washington. She had been assaulted, bound with plastic ties, and shot. Jay was nowhere to be seen, so investigators believed that he could be responsible for what happened to Tanya. The day after Tanya was found on November 25th, her wallet and keys were found discarded near the Graham station in Bellingham, Washington. A few blocks away, the van was found. Inside were plastic ties of the same type used to bind Tanya, plastic gloves, and Bremerton Seattle tickets. Tanya's camera was missing and has never been recovered. On November 26th, Jay's body was found nearly 60 miles away from where Tanya's body had been found 2 days earlier. He had been beaten with rocks and strangled. After some more investigating, DNA could be collected from an unknown man inside a van. Investigators were unable to find a match in any of the criminal databases. It was also believed that the attacker was familiar with the prison system. The lack of a match despite a potential prison background could be explained by the suspect having been incarcerated before DNA collection from criminals became commonplace or technologically possible. Jay Antonius, family members, received a series of greeting cards written by someone who claimed to be the attacker. The cards had postmarks from Seattle, Los Angeles, and New York. It was all written by the same person. In 2010, investigators announced that a writer of the cards had been found. He was a 78-year-old Canadian transient who had mental health issues. It was confirmed that he had no connection to the crimes. On April 11, 2018, investigators asked Parabon Nanolabs if they could help solve the case. They were able to create a composite sketch of the attacker, using his DNA that was found on Tanya's body and inside the van. Parabon also made use of genetic genealogy. They submitted the DNA of the suspect to the public website jetmatch.com. They were able to create a family tree of the suspect. This led investigators to 55-year-old William Tabbitt. He worked as a truck driver. Investigators followed him around and found a paper cup that he had used. DNA was taken from it and matched the DNA found on Tanya's body. On May 18, 2018, the Snohomish County Sheriff announced that William had been arrested. His parents lived just 7 miles away from where Jay's body was found. In June 2019, William was found guilty of taking the lives of Tanya and Jay. He was given 2 sentences of life in prison as he is currently serving in Washington State Penitentiary. 80-year-old Alice Ryan lived in Greenville, South Carolina in 1988. She was known as a wealthy socialite, a widow, and a great-aunt of Greenville Mayor Knox White. On October 8, 1988, Alice left her home for chemotherapy. She had been diagnosed with lung cancer a few months earlier. Later in the day, she made her way back to her home. Alice's daughter decided to visit her that day, and when she arrived at Alice's home, she found her mother's car gone, and a back door was ajar. Inside, she found Alice's body. She had been stabbed numerous times. Her car and a few other items had been stolen. It was a crime that infuriated the community. Investigators were really intent on trying to find the attacker right away. Every lead they had ended up in a dead end, however, and the case went cold for many decades. Recently, investigators reopened the case. They found DNA evidence belonging to an African-American man on one of the items that was collected and stored from the crime scene. It was submitted to the Combined DNA Index System, also known as CODIS. In November 2017, investigators were notified of a CODIS hit to a matching DNA profile. The DNA profile belonged to a 50-year-old man living in Americus, Georgia. After some more investigating and DNA testing, Brian Keithmans was arrested. The motive for the crime seems to be burglary. It was not classified as a hate crime. Greenville Police Chief Kane Miller added to say, It validates as we should never give up on a case. We should never give up hope. We should never give up our efforts to try and bring justice to those that were harmed, and closure for the families. On December 21st, 1987, the body of a female was discovered on the side of a road near Lincolnville in Marion County, Kansas. The autopsy estimated that she passed away somewhere between June and August 1987. She was described as Caucasian, roughly 5 feet and 7 inches tall, and weighed approximately 120 pounds. The woman had light brown hair and a tattoo of a cross on her left forearm. A composite sketch was made showing what she might have looked like. She was named the Marion County Jane Doe. In April 2019, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation worked alongside a DNA Doe project to absolve the case. They used DNA belonging to the victim to try and find her relatives using public DNA databases. In October of the same year, investigators found 2 people who they believed was the parents of the victim. Then in December 2019, after some ordnance testing, it was announced by the Kansas Bureau of Investigation that the identity of Marion County Jane Doe is Michelle Yvonne Carnell Burton. 22-year-old Michelle lived in Wichita, Kansas. She left her family's home in Cherryville in 1986, and her family lost touch with her. Her whereabouts after she left home is still not known yet. Are now focusing on who took Michelle's life. They are looking for information from the public. On March 12th of 1992, the remains of a male was discovered in Sand Canyon in Nevada, after police officers received an anonymous tip. The area the remains were found in is located in Nevada's high desert, about 100 miles away from Reno. An autopsy was done, and it was believed that a man's life was taken in the summer or spring of 1991. It was not possible to identify him, so he was named Sand Canyon John Doe. Clay reconstructions were made to give people nightmares, in hopes that someone would recognize him, but no one did. He had auburn hair, blue eyes, at least 1 root canal, and 8 of his teeth were missing. In a vicinity of where the remains were discovered, a dark-colored hat with the words, Heavenly Lake Tahoe, was found. Also blue jeans, black underwear, black running shoes, a damaged dog collar, and a blanket. The damaged dog collar is interesting because a resident of the area had lived close to where the remains were found, noticed a dog that would occasionally wander close to his house. It is possible that the dog belonged to the Sand Canyon John Doe. Lieutenant Jerry Pattinson of the Major Crumbs Division of the Lyon County Sheriff's Office recently took another look at a case. He was listening to a crime podcast about advances in technology, combining DNA science with genealogy data. In 2020, he contacted Parabon in a lab. Parabon was able to find relatives of the Sand Canyon John Doe. A DNA sample was taken from a man who investigators believed was the brother of the victim. In May of 2021, it was announced that Sand Canyon John Doe is Vincent Marion Trapp. He was born in Sacramento, California. He served in the U.S. Army in the late 1960s. Vincent was 43 years old when his life was taken. Investigators found that he lived in Irrington, Nevada in the spring of 1991. They also announced that they do have persons of interest, but cannot disclose any names. An image of Vincent was made public by investigators hoping that someone has some useful information. On May 8, 1992, the body of a male was found by irrigation workers in Hidalgo County, Texas. The autopsy revealed that he passed away a week before he was found and he had been stabbed. Investigators were unable to identify the man, and he was called John Doe. He was laid to rest in Hillcrest Cemetery in Edinburgh, Texas. A composite sketch was made of the man, hoping someone would recognize him, but no one did, and the case went cold. Melinda Chavez works for the Hidalgo County Major Crimes Unit, and she recently took her never look at a case. They used the DNA sample they had of the John Doe and submitted it to the National Missing and Unidentified Person System to look for any matches. There they found a woman who they believed was the mother of the John Doe. The woman said that she had a son who went missing in 1992. After DNA test, it was confirmed that her son Benjamin was indeed the John Doe. 19-year-old Benjamin Benetti lived in Zion, Illinois. He met a 17-year-old girl from McAllen, Texas in Illinois when her parents worked there. In March of 1992, he went to McAllen and got engaged to the girl. A week after Benjamin's body was found, his mom received a call from a mechanic in a Rio Grande Valley. The mechanic said had Benjamin left his car in the shop to get fixed, but never picked it up. Benjamin's mother then reported him missing to a few local police departments. Sadly, the connection between a missing Benjamin and a John Doe I was found was not made until now. Investigators also talked to Benjamin's fiancée. She said had he received the phone call and had he told her he needed to go to Mexico, and had she never saw him again. She never reported missing because her family made fun of her, saying Benjamin left and used her. Benjamin's mom saved all the documents and letters that she sent to all local law enforcement agencies in hopes to find her son. She never gave up. She was determined to find him. It was because she submitted her DNA to the National Missing and Unidentified Person System that her son could be identified. Benjamin's remains were given to her so that she can give him a proper funeral. He was buried in Maple Park Cemetery. On the headstone is described as kind and caring, a fine young man who his family will always love and never forget. If you have any information regarding this case and might be useful, you are asked to call this number. The case of Hannah Potts. After Hannah Potts, 23, went missing, an investigation involving the FBI began. The case received a lot of media attention, and the unraveling of the mysterious disappearance shocked many people. Hannah grew up in a large family in Gibson County, Indiana, a rural area where many people make a living from farming. Her family owned a small farm, which her parents considered a safe and ideal place to work, live, and raise their children. The summer of 2020 was a turning point for Hannah's family, after which their lives changed forever. On July 23rd, Hannah was struggling with insomnia. She told her mother that she was going to go out for a walk around the farm, check on the animals, and maybe take some pictures. Hannah then took her phone and camera and left the house and headed toward the barn. The next morning, the family was shocked to discover Hannah was missing. Adding to their worries, a disturbing post appeared on her Facebook page, a video, largely black, suggesting it had been recorded in the dark. Hannah desperately pleaded, "Mom, can you hear me? Please talk to me. I really need to hear your voice right now. Something bad happened. I was taking pictures of animals and the man grabbed me. I think he was trying to scare me. He was about as tall as Jerry and had a deep voice. He said he wanted to help me, but I didn't believe him. I'm in a room with 4 walls and a little light. I have my phone with me and I want you to know that they know about this. Please talk. You have to tell the police everything that's going on. They can find me by looking at the videos or pictures on my phone. That man mentioned Ohio, but I'm not sure exactly where. Please tell everyone that I love them, and if I don't make it back, know that I love you all very much." Hannah's parents quickly alerted the police, and given the circumstances and the fact that even minutes can change everything in such cases, the FBI launched an investigation. News of the abduction spread quickly on social media and was picked up by major stations across the country by the end of the day. Extensive media coverage was garnered, with a large number of volunteers joining Hannah's family in distributing thousands of informational flyers. The flyers included a description of Hannah's last known appearance. She was wearing a gray shirt and sweatpants when she was last seen at home around 2 a.m. The abductor's vehicle, a maroon sedan, was also described. Police appealed to the public for any information that could assist the investigation. Hannah's family used every resource at their disposal to find her, including using social media to quickly spread information about the abduction. Hannah's twin sister, Lauren, created a social media post to spread the word and seek support. The post read, "She is reaching out with a heavy heart, and she never thought she would be in this situation. She needs the help of her friends and family. Please share this post and the attached photo." If you have any information about her twin sister Hannah's disappearance, please contact the Princeton, Indiana Police Department or her family. Hannah posted a video earlier describing her kidnapping, and Lauren is desperate for her safe return home. The FBI attempted to locate Hannah by tracking her cell phone. On the day of her kidnapping, a cell tower a few miles from Hannah's family home picked up a signal from her phone. Around 6 a.m., Hannah posted a video to her Facebook page, but by then she was in custody. Her phone continued to pin to a nearby cell tower, indicating that she was likely being held at a location not far from her family home. Meanwhile, police had a lead on a suspect driving a maroon car, but they were unable to find anyone matching the description within a 5-mile radius of Hannah's home. While digging into Hannah's life and trying to find out if anyone she knew could be involved in her disappearance, police discovered that before she went missing, she had been in contact with a 34-year-old woman named Maria Hopper, who lived just a mile from their home. Police arrived to speak with Maria, who confirmed that she knew Hannah but said that she had last seen her a few days before the kidnapping. This seemed like another dead end, but when police obtained a cell phone carrier report and were able to access Hannah's social media page, where she had posted her heartbreaking plea, it became clear that Maria Hopper had lied when she said she had seen Hannah a few days before the kidnapping. Hannah went missing in the early morning hours of July 24th. 2 days later, on July 26th, police visited Maria's home. During this visit, Maria told police that she had no information about Hannah's whereabouts. Maria's boyfriend, Joshua Thomas, 45, was also present and claimed he did not know Hannah. The police asked Maria for permission to look around the house. The woman reluctantly agreed but immediately stated that Hannah was not in her house. The police found nothing suspicious inside except for a staircase in the kitchen leading down to the basement. Maria said that there was nothing but unnecessary things in the basement, but the police decided to check the basement themselves. In the basement, the police discovered a strange piece of plywood that stood out among the other dusty items. Its cleanliness suggested that it had not been stored there as long as the other items. Furthermore, it appeared to be blocking the entrance to a separate area of the basement. As an officer began to remove the plywood, Maria interjected with an important statement. Before we continue, however, let's review the recording Hannah made. When shared on social media, many were quick to point out the strangeness and incongruity of Hannah's actions in the video. She recorded a 6-minute video, raising questions about why she prioritized her time filming instead of calling for help immediately. It is also unclear why the kidnapper did not search her and confiscate her phone. The purpose of the video is also puzzling, especially since it was filmed at 2 a.m. on a farm. Additionally, her initial claim of being kidnapped by a man was later contradicted when she mentioned they referring to multiple kidnappers. Despite having internet access and the ability to post on social media, she did not use this opportunity to identify her location and potentially seek help. Police have noted unusual behavior surrounding Hannah's disappearance. However, since people react differently to stress, they initially treated her disappearance as a kidnapping. The investigation was ongoing until police obtained records of communications between Hannah and Maria, which led to a breakthrough. At Maria's home, when an officer asked about a piece of plywood in the basement, Maria confessed that Hannah had been hiding behind it. The officer then pushed the plywood aside and ordered her to come toward him. When Hannah emerged, the officer found her right handcuffed and her legs still working. The woman immediately admitted to the police that no one had kidnapped her and that she was sitting in the basement of her own free will. It turned out that Hannah had planned her own kidnapping with the assistance of Maria Hopper and Joshua Thomas. This became clear through their social media exchanges. The tone, content, and context of the messages read like fiction. The three were taken to the police station for further investigation after their arrest. As the police tried to understand the motive behind the incident, Hannah explained that she was an aspiring author writing a book. In an effort to gain inspiration and gain a deeper understanding of the experiences of kidnapping victims, Hannah decided to stage her own fake kidnapping. To achieve this, she enlisted the help of her friends Maria and Joshua, who became characters in her story. According to Hannah, her friends helped her plan and carry out the fake kidnapping by hiding her in their basement, providing her with food and drinks, and deliberately destroying her cell phone to avoid detection by the police. Hannah filmed a video of the alleged kidnapping and posted it on her Facebook page, causing great concern and distress to her family and others. Hannah rehearsed the video for about a week before making it without telling her family members about her plans. After the truth was revealed, Her family apologized to everyone involved in the search and those who were concerned for her safety. Hannah's sister, Lauren, took to social media to publicly apologize and express her feelings about the situation. In her statement, Lauren said her family was deeply hurt and embarrassed by Hannah's actions, and they felt betrayed. Lauren made it clear that she no longer wanted any relationship with her sister and hoped Hannah would be held accountable for her actions. Lauren also addressed her concerns about Hannah's story targeting a person of color with a specific description of the car. She prayed that no one would be unfairly targeted or harmed because of her sister's false statements. Additionally, Lauren expressed regret for the pain her family has endured, including her 6-year-old son, who was deeply affected by Hannah's dishonesty. Hannah Potts kept a personal journal in her friend's basement in which she wrote that she expected her social media post to go viral. As a result of her actions, she is now facing charges of falsely reporting her own abduction. According to Gibson County Prosecutor Michael Cochran, Hannah's actions were not only criminal, but also caused significant distress to her family and everyone around her. Furthermore, by providing a false description of her alleged abductor, Hannah put innocent people at risk of mistaken identity. Furthermore, the case wasted valuable time and resources as multiple law enforcement agencies were involved in the investigation. In a time of limited resources, these wasted hours can never be recovered. Prosecutor Cochran stressed that such a callous disregard for others will not be tolerated. Maria Hopper and Joshua Thomas were charged with perjury and assisting in the concealment of a kidnapping hoax. During a police interview, Hopper admitted to picking up Hannah Potts from her home and lying about hiding her. Thomas also admitted to knowing about the staged kidnapping and Hannah's presence in his home. All three individuals are free on bail and awaiting trial. In September 2020, Hannah Potts pleaded guilty to filing a false kidnapping report. As a result, she was sentenced to 1 year of probation and 120 hours of community service. Joshua Thomas and Maria Hopper were also sentenced to probation. Some people who know this story believe that Hannah Potts faked her kidnapping to inspire her book and to attract attention to herself, which she hoped would boost her book sales. 91-year-old Leola Jordan lived in Picayune, Mississippi in 1998, had raised 7 children and was well loved in the community. Neighbors said she would do anything for anybody. She would look out for kids when it got on and off the school bus. She was an all-around good lady. Sadly, her life would not come to a peaceful end. Leola's body was discovered in her home in late June 1998. She had been stabbed numerous times. It was baffling to investigators as someone would want to take her life. There were no signs of forced entry, and nothing seemed to be stolen. For more than 2 decades, investigators have worked to solve the case. Finally, in May 2021, Sergio Williams was arrested in connection to the case. He is Leola's grandson. His DNA matched DNA found on items an attacker had touched, is currently being held in Pearl River County Jail. The DNA, along with witness statements, led to the arrest. It has not yet been revealed why Sergio did what he did. In January of 2021, 20-year-old Henry Williams was arrested in Jacksonville, Florida. In August 2015, when he was 14 years old, he assaulted an 8-year-old girl. The little girl was looking for a cat when she encountered this monster. She was not able to identify her attacker. She only said that he was a black male. In October 2020, Henry was imprisoned for a fatal 2017 carjacking. His DNA was taken and it was realized in January 2021, and he was involved in an attack back in 2015. He is currently incarcerated at Lake City Correctional Facility. "46-year-old Holly Simmons lived in Larno County, Texas in 2006 with her 17-year-old daughter. On November 27th, Holly dropped off her daughter at a school bus stop. It would be the last time anyone saw or heard from her. The next day, her daughter reported her missing because Holly never made it home. Her house was examined for evidence, and neighbors, co-workers, and associates were interviewed by investigators. The Llano County Sheriff's Office and the Texas Rangers worked this case for years, but she was not found. Then in 2009, a recreational diver found a submerged aluminum boat at the bottom of a lake close to Holly's home. Her body was discovered at the bottom of the boat, with concrete bags placed over her. In 2016, the Texas Rangers' Unsolved Crimes Investigation Program began to review the case. They named Jimmy Wolfenbarger as a suspect. He was Holly's landlord and lived nearby in an RV park. In May of 2021, 57-year-old Jimmy was arrested and sent to the Lappi County Detention Center. Holly's brother Paul Wishman had us to say, hopefully he doesn't get away, and hopefully they've got a good case, and justice will be served for her, her kids, her grandkids, and the rest of the family. It is not yet known what led to the arrest or why he took her life. In the middle of the night, on March 17, 1983, a Montgomery County Sheriff's Office deputy saw a fire burning in a wooded area of Interstate 45 in Conroe, Texas. When he investigated, he discovered the body of a woman had been set on fire and was still burning. In the autopsy that was done, it was revealed the woman had been assaulted and strangled. Investigators were unable to identify the woman, but they were able to collect male DNA from her body. In 1986, a few years after the woman's body was found, the FBI ran her fingerprints and was able to positively identify her as Laura Marie Purchase. She was listed as a missing person from Houston, Texas. Henry Lee Lucas confessed to taking her life, and he was convicted for the crime. Case closed, right? Not yet. Henry Lee Lucas is notorious for confessing to crimes he did not commit. This was one of them. In 2007, investigators resubmitted the male DNA found on Laura's body for testing. It was discovered that the DNA did not belong to Henry Lee Lucas. It also did not match Otis Stull's DNA. Otis and Henry committed a lot of crimes together. The two of them enjoyed confessing to crimes, so they would gain more notoriety. In October 2019, investigators submitted the DNA evidence for genealogy testing. This led investigators to Thomas Alvin Darnell. On March 17, 2021, Montgomery County cold case detectives traveled to Kansas City to collect a DNA sample from Thomas. His DNA matched the DNA found on Laura's body. On May 11, 2021, was arrested at his home and taken to Montgomery County. He is currently being held in the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office jail without bond. He has not yet entered a plea. It is unclear if he has an attorney who can speak on his behalf. The case of Samadhi Fonseca Fernandez. Samadhi was born in Costa Rica in February 1975. Information about her family and childhood is limited. She grew up in the Cuban with her mother, Sonia Fonseca. From a young age, Samadhi attended a local school and showed a complex personality. Samadhi stood out for her beauty and knew how to take advantage of her appearance. However, due to her ambition and vanity, she put material and personal interests first, disappointing many people. She was also very jealous and aggressive when she was young. Thanks to her doll-like appearance, Samadhi Fonseca worked for many years as a Barbie in a large bookstore of the Universal Company. The nickname Barbie stuck with her ever since. After graduating from high school, Samadhi began a relationship with Osvaldo Fernando Belair, a successful journalist working for a local television station. Osvaldo was 16 older than Samadhi. This was Samadhi's longest and most serious relationship, but Osvaldo never proposed to her. In 1996, they had a son, Christopher, and a year later, a daughter, Christina, was born. Due to scandals and jealousy, Samadhi and Osvaldo divorced in February 2012. In February 2013, Osvaldo died at the age of 53 without leaving a will for Samadhi. Not accepting this, Samadhi decided to take matters into her own hands. She went to Osvaldo's old house, occupied it, and changed the locks to prevent his family and heirs from entering. In addition to seizing the property, Samadhi also took some of Osvaldo's valuables. Osvaldo's family was extremely angry and immediately sued Samadhi for theft. The police forced Samadhi to leave the house, but no criminal proceedings were initiated against her. Samadhi had several relationships, most notably with Miguel Angel Perez, with whom she had a third daughter, Maria. Some sources claim that they were married but divorced after a few years. However, other sources claim that Samadhi was not married, but simply gave her youngest daughter her lover's surname without his consent. Many strange events have been discovered. Some Barbie lovers have gone missing or died under mysterious circumstances. However, this has not been noticed for a long time. For example, one of Samadhi's lovers went missing after breaking up with her. To this day, this person has not been found. Many suspect Samadhi's involvement, but there is no concrete evidence. Another case is Diaco, also Samadhi's former lover. He was murdered after breaking up with her. The case looked like a failed robbery. The perpetrator was never caught. Again, people suspected Samadhi was involved, but there was no clear evidence. The most famous victim believed to be linked to Samadhi was Gerardo Cruz. Gerardo Cruz, a Costa Rican native, was born in December 1992 in San Jose. He did not know his biological father because he left the family before he was born. Gerardo's mother, Ana Patricia, later married a man named Hermes Rodriguez. Hermes adopted Gerardo and loved him as his own son. A few years later, Gerardo had a younger sister named Milena. His childhood and youth were quite peaceful. He attended a normal school, loved motorbikes, and soon found true love with a girl named Carol. At the age of 23, Gerardo, his wife and 4-year-old daughter Genesis Cruz, moved to live with his aunt and uncle in the suburbs of San Sebastian. He worked at a local bakery to support his family. Gerardo and Carol was happy and were expecting a second child. In the summer of 2015, Gerardo met Samadhi, a regular customer at the bakery. Samadhi was 40 years old but still attractive, liked to dress provocatively and flirt with men. Notably, she started having affairs with much younger men, probably because she enjoyed the attention they received. Despite the age difference of nearly 20 years, Gerardo quickly became infatuated with this beautiful woman and began dating her secretly. She often came to the bakery, almost every day, to meet her young lover, attracting the attention of other employees. Samadhi was often accompanied by his eldest daughter Christina, who was 19 at the time. Initially, Gerardo skillfully balanced his family life with his secret meetings with his mistress. Both women were unaware of each other's existence. However, Gerardo gradually became careless and began telling his friends and colleagues about Samadhi, praising her as a great mistress and giving him gifts. Rumors of Gerardo's relationship soon reached his mother, who tried to convince her son to leave his mistress. However, Gerardo and Samadhi's relationship only lasted a few months and ended in October 2015 when Samadhi discovered that Gerardo had a pregnant wife and a young daughter. Samadhi was furious and began calling and texting Gerardo's wife, Carol, insulting her and threatening to kill Gerardo if he did not stay with her. Gerardo begged his wife for forgiveness and wanted to keep the family together. He did not take Samadhi's threat seriously, thinking that she would quickly cool down and find a new boyfriend. He did not expect how vengeful Samadhi would become. Just a few days after the breakup with Samadhi, while walking on a downtown street, Gerardo discovered an older man secretly filming up a young woman's skirt. Gerardo was angry and decided to record the incident with his phone. He then approached the woman, explained the situation, and advised her to call the police. Next, he chased the man for about 2 minutes, trying to capture his face. Finally, the man fled in a taxi. That evening, Gerardo posted a video of the incident on his personal website. After just one night, the video went viral online. Netizens quickly identified the elderly man in the video as Luis Solmano Delgado, a former finance ministry official. The video quickly spread across media, turning Gerardo into a national celebrity. He was repeatedly invited to interviews in newspapers, on television and on radio to recount the incident, condemn the former official's actions, and affirm that he had no regrets about what he had done. Meanwhile, a team of talented lawyers hired by Luis began to legally attack Gerardo. They accused him of violating the law by distributing the video and were preparing to sue him. Gerardo was surprised and confused by the situation, not knowing why he was being tried instead of the man who had committed a depraved act with an innocent girl. On October 7th, Gerardo gave his final interview on a local radio station. He was confident in his views and did not feel nervous. The next day, Gerardo planned to meet his friend Oswald after work, but canceled, citing an emergency. It was later revealed that Gerardo had received a text message from Samadhi that day. In the message, she had lured him to the park that evening with the promise of another interview. Gerardo trusted his ex-girlfriend completely and did not suspect anything. After work, he went to the meeting place, but instead of meeting the journalist, he was attacked by two strange men. They robbed him of his bag, beat him and stabbed him several times in the chest and stomach before running away. Before losing consciousness, Gerardo called his friend to tell him the news. The friend immediately called the police and an ambulance. Thanks to timely treatment, Gerardo was taken to the hospital. Doctors tried to save his life for 42 days. During this time, Gerardo underwent many surgeries, but ultimately did not survive. On November 19th, Gerardo passed away in the intensive care unit. Since Gerardo had just become famous before the tragedy, the news of his condition attracted national attention and was not exaggerated. Gerardo's family gave interviews, asking people to pray for his recovery. They did not understand why someone would attack Gerardo. Many people attended the funeral to express their condolences to the family. People hoped that the police would soon catch the culprit and give him a fair trial. There were initially many theories about the case. One theory was that it was a robbery murder because Gerardo was attacked in the park in the evening, his bag was stolen, and he was stabbed with a knife. However, a few days before, Gerardo released a shocking video involving a famous former official, which could be related to the case. Therefore, the second theory was that it was a revenge murder. The media reported that Luis Solmano Delgado may have hired a hitman to kill the young man who had damaged his reputation. The case caused a heated debate in the press, and people protested to demand the arrest of the culprit. The police began to investigate various theories and look for Gerardo's enemies. The investigation went dormant for months until May 2016, when a security camera video was discovered. The video showed two men running away from the crime scene. They immediately became prime suspects, but the police needed to identify and arrest them. The video became crucial evidence and, when released, helped move the investigation forward. The video was repeatedly shown on the news, urging viewers to look out for dangerous suspects. Police sketched the suspects and their physical features. Not long after, one suspect turned himself in and cooperated with the investigation, hoping for a reduced sentence. Thanks to his information, the investigation quickly identified other accomplices and the masterminds. All those involved were arrested, including Samadhi and his daughter Cristina, the masterminds Ronald Arce Barrientos, the taxi driver, Cesar Chavez Cerdas, who acted as an intermediary, Omar Costa, the young miner who directly participated in the attack and followed the victim. The roles and connections of the participants in the case were determined through phone calls and text messages. Samadhi was the mastermind, who planned the entire incident in detail and recruited his daughter Cristina to participate. They asked their friends Ronald and Cesar to find an assassin to kill Gerardo, disguising it as a robbery in the park at night. Omar also participated with the task of ensuring that the victim arrived at the right location. Samadhi chose October 7th as the date of the murder. On that day, she contacted all the participants several times, assigning roles and ensuring that everyone followed the plan. The young woman also asked them to bring her some of her ex-lover's belongings as evidence after the crime. Gerardo, after finishing his shift, went straight to the park. He thought he was going to an interview, so he tried to arrive on time. However, at the meeting place, he was attacked and stabbed multiple times. The attacker took Gerardo's handbag and jacket, then gave these to the Samadhi as evidence. The most important evidence against Samadhi were text messages detailing the murder plan and the roles of each participant. She was so confident that she did not delete these messages. The motive for this serious crime was jealousy. She did not want to share her lover with his wife and decided that if she could not have him, no one could. She carefully planned and executed the criminal conspiracy with the help of her daughter. They were immediately arrested and denied bail due to concerns that they might flee the country. The other co-defendants were also detained before trial, except for Omar, the supervisor, and the youngest participant was handed over to the Juvenile Justice Department. The investigation lasted about a year and a half. It was not until December 2017 that the trial of all those involved in the criminal conspiracy began. Samadhi has a criminal record and was once arrested for falsifying documents to receive state benefits, but was only fined. She assigned the surname of a former lover to the child without his consent. She then used the court to receive child support from this man for more than 3 years, until the fraud was discovered. Samadhi was sentenced to 3 years in prison and fined a large sum. However, because she has a young child, her sentence was reduced to 5 years of suspended imprisonment. At the trial, the victim Gerardo's wife confirmed that she knew about her husband's relationship with Samadhi. She also said that Samadhi had threatened to kill Gerardo, but he was not too worried about these threats. The main motive for the case was Samadhi's jealousy and hurt, as she could not accept that her young lover wanted to stay with his wife. Through phone records, police discovered that Samadhi and her daughter Christina had planned the crime together. After the security camera footage of the murders was released, Christina had a mental breakdown. She called her mother in tears and wanted to turn herself in, but Samadhi reassured her that the investigation would never lead to them. The verdict was announced on January 23, 2018. The court sentenced Samadhi to 30 years in prison, Christina to 25 years, Ronald to 25 years, and Caesar to 25 years. Of the killers, one was sent to a juvenile detention center, while another was still at large at the time. Omar, who had been stalking the victim, was acquitted. The victim's family received $140,000 in moral compensation. After the trial, they expressed their gratitude to the court for giving Gerardo's killers a fair sentence. Samadhi and Christina's lawyers appealed to the Court of Appeals for a reduced sentence. The appeal hearing took place in November 2019. At the same time, according to the testimony, Ronald participated in the massacre but did not know the details of the plan. Ronald and Caesar also appealed in hopes of having their sentences reduced. As a result, each participant in the crime had their sentence reduced by 5 years. Samadhi is currently serving a 25-year sentence in a women's prison in Costa, currently serving a 25-year sentence in a women's prison in Costa Rica. In the summer of 2020, she registered her marriage to a woman named Lindsay Diaz Lopez, whom she met in prison. At the time of the registration, Lindsay had been pardoned and released from prison, while Samadhi still had to continue serving nearly 2 more decades of her sentence. In 1996, Janet March lived in Nashville, Tennessee, along with her husband Perry, their 5-year-old son Samson, and a 2-year-old daughter, Zipporah. The family lived in a large house on a 5-acre lot in Forest Hills, which is an affluent suburb in Nashville. Janet's parents bought the house for Janet and Perry. Her parents, Lawrence and Carolyn Levine, were extremely wealthy. Lawrence was one of the most prominent lawyers in Nashville, which made him socially prominent in the city's Jewish community. Janet and Perry met while they were studying at the University of Michigan in the early 1980s. Lawrence paid Perry's tuition so that he could study at the Vanderbilt University Law School. Janet and Perry got married in 1987. The year after that, Perry graduated and took a job at Bass and Sims. Their son Samson was born in 1990, and Zipporah was born in 1994. Perry did not last long at his work. He sent a lot of notes to one of his co-workers. Perry praised their body and said it captivated him. The co-worker then let management know about all the notes that she had received. Perry was caught in the act of delivering one of these notes and he was fired. He also had to pay the woman $25,000 to avoid a lawsuit against him. The payment and what he did, he kept as a secret from Janet. Perry then started to work for Janet's father, and he told everyone he got fired because of a conflict with a coworker. Even without Janet knowing, the two of them started to argue a lot by 1996. Janet even got a book about divorce. On August 14th, the children's nanny, remember, had Janet was not her usual self, and had she spent the whole day on her computer. The next day, friends of Janet who saw or talked to her also noticed had she seemed distracted and afraid of Perry. On August 15th, 2 cabinet workers installed 2 countertops in Janet and Perry's home. They would be the last people outside of Janet's family to see her alive. That evening, according to Perry, the two of them argued again. then announced that she was leaving for a 2-week vacation. She packed a couple of things, gave him a list of things to do while she was away, and left the house just after 8 p.m. Janet's parents believed what Perry had told them, even if it was unlike their daughter. On August 25th, it was Samson's birthday party. When Janet did not appear, it raised some red flags. On August 29th, Janet's parents finally notified the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department that Janet was missing. This was now 2 weeks after she was last seen. Detectives looked at local hospital admissions and Janet's credit card and bank accounts, but found no trace of her. The first break in the case came a little over a week later, on September 7th, when Janet's Volvo was found packed into a parking space at an apartment complex roughly 5 miles from the house. Inside was Janet's handbag, a suitcase with clothing and a small bag. It appeared as if the items inside the car was carefully positioned by someone. Investigators who interviewed Perry also noticed had he talked about Janet in the past tense, indicating had he knew she was not alive anymore. He also did not allow anyone to search the house. On September 16th, investigators got a search warrant, however, and made their way inside. They found that a computer's hard drive had been forcibly removed and could not be found. Investigators also found that a week after Janet was last seen, went to local tire store to get new tires for his Jeep. The owner of the store told him that his existing tires were in excellent condition, but Perry said that he wanted a different brand. After the search, Perry took his children and went to live in Chicago. He made a very incriminating remark to one of Janet's friends. He asked her what would she think if he took Janet's life and exposed her body while the children were sleeping. By this time, investigators did not believe Janet was alive anymore and Perry was their main suspect. They used Army helicopters, divers, and cadaver dogs to look for Janet's body. In November, also denied to Janet's memorial service, and he did not allow the 2 children to go. The next few years were just filled with lawsuits between Perry and Janet's parents. They now believed that Perry took her daughter's life. They wanted custody of the 2 children, and they also wanted to make sure that Perry did have a right to any of Janet's possessions. Carolyn Levin found an envelope in a Forrest Deal's house. Inside were copies of the notes Perry had sent to his co-worker. Investigators and Janet's parents believed that Janet had discovered these notes and demanded a divorce, and that Perry then took her life. In 1999, Janet's parents were given visitation rights. When they went to pick up the children in Chicago, they learned that Perry went to love in Mexico with his father. His father lived close to Guadalajara in Mexico. In 2000, Janet's parents went to Mexico. They picked up the children from their school and took them back to Nashville. Unfortunately, this was seen as kidnapping under Mexican law, and they had to take the children back to the man that they believed took their daughter's life. Janet's parents continued working hard to prove that Perry is guilty, even though nobody had been found. Finally, in 2005, Perry was arrested and taken back to the United States. Janet's parents also got full custody of her grandchildren. Perry told detectives that he would plead guilty if he would be given a sentence of 7 years or less. He also wanted to know what evidence was against him, but investigators told him nothing and took him to the county jail. Perry immediately approached Russell Ferris, who was another inmate. Perry said that he would pay Russell's bond if he would take the lives of Janet's parents. Russell pretended to go along with the plan, but he was also telling everything to his lawyers and investigators. Perry also said that his dad would help with anything that he needed. His father explained to Russell exactly what they need him to do. His father was then taught by Russell that he did what they asked for and needed a place to stay. The father then arranged to meet Russell at a Guadalajara airport. But when he got there, FBI agents detained him, who take him back to the United States. In June 2006, Perry's trial began. This was now almost 10 years after Janet was last seen. It seemed like it would go either way, but then a video was shown in a courtroom. It showed Perry's father confessing and telling everyone what happened. His father said that Perry did take Janet's life, and the 2 of them took her body to Bowling Green, Kentucky. Perry's father then buried her in a large pile of brush he found. He was not able to take investigators to the exact location, but I found his account to be credible anyways. On August 17, 2006, a jury reached a verdict after 10 hours of deliberations. Perry was found guilty of taking his wife's life. He was sentenced to 56 years in prison. His father was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but passed away just a few months later at the age of 79. Perry will not be eligible for parole until 2040. His daughter Zipporah still sometimes has contact with him, but Samson, who is now an engineer, wants nothing to do with him. An art gallery at Nashville's Gordon Jewish Community Center was named for Janet as a memorial. The case of Tanya McKinley. Tanya McKinley was born on January 25, 1961, in Milton, a small town in Florida, USA. She grew up in a loving family and had a close relationship with her older sister. As children, they often played outside, skateboard, and went bowling. After graduating from high school, Tanya decided to move to Pensacola, about 25 miles away from her hometown, to explore the medical field and become a medical transcriptionist. To become a medical transcriptionist, Tanya did not need a medical degree but only had to take special courses. She moved in with her cousin, Vanita, to save on rent. In Pensacola, Tanya met a boy named Tim, and they began dating. They later moved in together, and in 1983, their son Timothy was born. However, Tanya's relationship with Tim was not perfect. They argued frequently, and about a year after Timothy was born, they decided to separate. At the end of 1984, Tanya temporarily moved in with her cousin, Vanita, who was now married and had 2 children. Tanya planned to find her own place and move out as soon as she could. One day, Tanya, her sister, and Vanita's husband decided to go to a local bar to celebrate New Year's Eve. Vanita and Tanya dropped their children off at daycare and decided to enjoy the night. At the bar, they had a night full of laughter and music. As the clock struck midnight, they welcomed the new year, 1985. Vanita and her husband were about to go home, but the daycare they had left their children at closed at 1 a.m., so they needed to pick them up in an hour. However, Tanya wanted to stay at the bar a little longer because, for the past 2 years, she had been focused on work and taking care of her children. Tanya asked Vanita if she could pick up her son from daycare, and Vanita agreed since they lived together and needed to pick up her son anyway. Before Vanita and her husband left the bar, Vanita asked Tanya how she would get home since they had gone to the bar together by car. Tanya told Vanita not to worry and assured her that she would find a way home since she had many acquaintances at the bar. On the morning of January 1st, Vanita woke up and was surprised to find that Tanya had not returned. Normally, Tanya would have been home by then, so this delay was unusual. At first, Vanita was not too worried, thinking that Tanya might have stayed at a friend's house. However, things quickly changed when Vanita's mother-in-law knocked on their door with a shocking announcement. Tanya had been found dead in the early hours of the morning, around 3 a.m. A Pensacola resident had taken her dog to the vet for an urgent medical issue. While the woman was out, her daughter saw a strange object on the road. She thought it was a mannequin, but when she told her mother, the woman decided to take a closer look. She was horrified to realize it was actually a human body. She immediately returned home and called the police. Police arrived at the crime scene and found the body of a 23-year-old woman named Tanya McKinley lying in a vacant lot near the road. When they arrived, they found her pantyhose pulled down, her skirt pulled up, and her shoes missing. Police also found a blue scarf with a red stain that looked like blood next to the victim. Her shoes were found a few blocks away, along with a wallet containing identification in her name. To clarify the cause of Tanya's death and the development of the case, the police handed over the victim's body to medical experts for an autopsy. Investigators also continued to collect and analyze traces at the scene. After the initial investigation, it was discovered that the victim was likely killed elsewhere, as there was no blood near the body except for the blue towel stain. Furthermore, traces on the ground showed that the body had been dragged to the side of the road. On the blue towel and the victim's body, the police found some suspicious traces. These were human hair and pubic hair along with dog hair. They suspected that these hair and pubic hair samples might belong to the killer and that this person might have kept dogs. After the autopsy, medical experts determined that Tanya suffered a head injury from being hit with a heavy object. However, the main cause of her death was strangulation. Furthermore, experts also confirmed that the victim had been sexually assaulted. Experts collected a semen sample from the victim's body, but at the time, DNA analysis was not widely used in forensic science. Therefore, they could only determine that the suspect had type B blood. Since these clues did not help the detectives find the killer, they began to develop a list of suspects. The first suspect they focused on was Tim, the victim's ex-boyfriend. Through talking to Tanya's relatives and friends, the police discovered problems in the relationship between Tanya and Tim, as well as constant arguments both before and after the birth of their son. When Tanya decided to break up, Tim objected and continued to try to convince her to come back. Tim kept calling Tanya, visiting her, and acting as if he could not accept the breakup. The police suspected that Tim may have followed Tanya to the bar on New Year's Eve, leading to a confrontation that ended in murder. They questioned Tim, but he denied any involvement. Tim also agreed to provide a hair sample for comparison. Although experts were unable to extract DNA from the hair, they were able to compare the hairs under a microscope. The results showed that Tim's hair was significantly different from the hair found on the victim's body and the towel. As a result, the police temporarily eliminated Tim as a suspect. After collecting clues at the scene, the detectives turned their attention to the people who were at the bar on New Year's Eve. They questioned Vanita about whether she had noticed anyone acting strangely or aggressively toward Tanya. However, Vanetta said the evening had gone smoothly and without incident. Investigators also learned that Tanya had briefly dated a man named Kurt, who worked as a bartender at the same bar. So they interviewed Kurt, who denied any involvement in the murder. Kurt claimed that after finishing his shift, he attended a New Year's Eve party with friends. However, after questioning Kurt's friends, investigators discovered something interesting. Kurt's friends confirmed that he was at the party, but not immediately after finishing his shift at the bar. Based on this testimony, police believed that Kurt had enough time to theoretically commit the murder. Through interviews with many people who were at the bar, detectives determined that Tanya was last seen alive at 1:15 a.m., but no one witnessed her leaving the bar. Investigators also interviewed residents in the area near where the body was found. One family said they drove by around 2 a.m. and they were certain that no body was visible at that time. Investigators determined that Tanya was killed within an hour and a half of her last known sighting. During this time, Kurt had no solid alibi. He agreed to take a polygraph test, but the results were inconclusive as he gave several false answers. However, blood tests eliminated Kurt as a suspect because his blood type did not match the killer's blood type, which was determined from a semen sample. The police continued to search for other potential suspects, but their efforts were hampered. The killer's semen could not be analyzed, and the lack of significant evidence or witnesses left the case at a standstill. However, investigators were almost certain that the killer must have lived in the area near where the body was found. The area was on the edge of a large residential area and was isolated from major roads. Police suspected that a stranger would not have come there with the body without knowing anything about the area. To this day, the case remains unsolved. Sadly, Timothy lost his mother when he was 18 old and was taken care of by his father and Tanya's family. They decided to keep the death of Timothy's mother a secret. As he grew older, relatives told him that his mother had died in a car accident. This truth was kept secret until Timothy turned 14. At Christmas, he was curious about the gift his father had prepared. While rummaging through the house, Timothy stumbled upon a letter written by his father, addressed to famous TV host Montel Williams. Tim mentioned Tanya's murder in the letter, hoping that public attention would help expedite the investigation. Through the letter, Timothy discovered the true fate of his mother because it contained specific details about the case. In February, the police department reopened Tanya's case, hoping that advances in DNA analysis would help identify the killer. To investigate, they sent all available evidence to a lab for analysis. After testing, experts concluded that the blood on the blue towel found near the body belonged to an unknown man, not Tanya. They took a sample of the man's DNA and uploaded it to the FBI database, but found no match. The case went cold again and wasn't reopened until February 2015, exactly 30 years after the murder. Detectives had to try a different approach when the killer's DNA had not yet appeared in the FBI database. With modern technology, they could search not only for exact matches but also for partial matches. They believed the database might contain information about the killer's relatives, which could lead them closer to solving the case. After searching, they focused on one specific person in the FBI database. His DNA had some similarities to the DNA sample of Tanya's killer, although the similarity was not strong. The police investigated his family extensively and even contacted his relatives. They agreed to assist and provide their DNA samples for comparison. After analyzing the samples, experts discovered that the family had no connection to the suspect, leaving detectives without any significant new clues. In February 2018, journalist Tony Adam took an interest in the case. Although he was not a criminal expert, his personal interest in the subject drew him to Tanya's unsolved murder. He wanted to help and contacted the investigators working on the case. The detectives initially viewed his willingness to help with some skepticism. Although an experienced journalist, Tony had no background in criminal investigations. However, as the case dragged on without any progress, the police accepted his help. During the investigation, Tony established a relationship with Tanya's family. They could see his genuine interest in solving the case and the considerable effort he was putting in. He worked to get media coverage of the case, bringing additional attention to it. This also contributed a new perspective to an investigation that had lasted for more than 3 decades. Detectives decided to renew their efforts to find the suspect's relatives. This time, they partnered with Parabon, a company specializing in genetic genealogy. In the previous effort, investigators had only searched for killers' relatives through the FBI's database. However, Parabon expanded the search to include public genetic databases where anyone can upload their DNA samples. Experts worked diligently to find the killer's relatives, carefully examining family trees to identify someone matching the suspect's characteristics. They were looking for a man who was of age at the time of the crime in 1985 and lived in the area. The process took nearly a year. But in February 2020, experts finally identified a man who could be a suspect, Daniel Wells, 57, who lived in the same city where the murder occurred. As detectives learned more about Daniel, they discovered he had previous run-ins with the law, having been arrested for assault and for indecent exposure in the late 1980s. As of 2020, Daniel continued to live and work in Pensacola with his family. However, to establish a connection between him and the case, investigators needed to collect a DNA sample from Daniel due to a lack of concrete evidence. The police had been monitoring Daniel closely, concerned that he might flee once he learned he was a suspect. The opportunity presented itself when Daniel discarded a cigarette but near his workplace. Investigators collected it and quickly sent it to the lab. There, experts isolated DNA from the saliva on the butt and compared it to the DNA sample from the crime scene. The results showed that the 2 samples were a perfect match. 35 years after the murder, the police finally identified the culprit through DNA evidence. Daniel was arrested that same day. Despite the DNA test results, the investigators wanted to hear Daniel's confession. They planned to conduct the interrogation carefully, not revealing all the evidence at once. The investigators deliberately withheld information to encourage honesty during Daniel's interrogation. They gradually shifted the conversation to Tanya's murder and asked about Daniel's whereabouts on the night of the crime. At first, he denied ever knowing Tanya. The detectives then revealed that they had found his DNA at the crime scene. Although Daniel continued to deny everything, he appeared to become more nervous with each question. The detectives emphasized the importance of the DNA test results, making it impossible for him to avoid the questions. They told him that the only way to alleviate the situation was to confess. And it worked. Daniel began to tell his story. Initially, he tried to justify the presence of his DNA by suggesting that he might have had sex with Tanya that night. But the detectives didn't believe him and continued pressing for the truth. Daniel eventually confessed to killing Tanya on that New Year's Eve. Daniel's story raised serious questions. He admitted that he met Tanya at a bar and offered to take her home. They then went to Daniel's house, drank, and had consensual sex. However, an argument broke out, and Daniel couldn't remember what it was about. In a fit of rage, Daniel picked up a heavy wooden cutting board and hit Tanya over the head. When he realized she was dead, he panicked and took her body to another location to dispose of it. On the way back, he discarded her belongings and returned home. However, Daniel's story had many inconsistencies. When asked about the dog hairs on Tanya's clothes and towels, he explained that his roommate had a black Labrador. But this did not explain why Tanya would willingly have sex with him only to have a violent argument that led to her death. Furthermore, Daniel claimed that Tanya died from a blow to the head, but medical experts determined that the actual cause of death was strangulation. This made Daniel's story unreliable and suggested he was trying to minimize his responsibility. A more plausible scenario is that Daniel attacked Tanya, but she fought back. When this failed, Daniel struck Tanya's head, but then realized she was still alive, so he strangled her. Although Daniel's confession did not completely match the facts, detectives had enough evidence to arrest him. Daniel was arrested for murder and taken into custody. Investigators then contacted Tanya's family, including her son, to let them know that the killer had been caught. Timothy was emotional and thanked the police for finding his mother's killer. However, Daniel did not face trial or serve any prison time for his actions. Just 2 weeks after his arrest, Daniel's body was found in his cell. An autopsy revealed that he had committed suicide. Although Tanya's family was disappointed that the killer had committed suicide in prison, they finally received justice after 35 years. 18-year-old Natalie and Holloway lived in Mountain Brook, Alabama. In May of 2005, she graduated from Mountain Brook High School. Natalie was a member of the National Honor Society and a school dance squad. The next year, she was scheduled to attend the University of Alabama on a full scholarship. On May 26, 2005, Natalie and 124 of her fellow graduates of Mountain Brook arrived in Urangrestad, Aruba for a 5-day unofficial graduation trip. 7 chaperones from the school went along, but as you can imagine, they were not able to track the whereabouts of all the students. Natalie was scheduled to fly back home on May 30, 2005, when she failed to appear for her flight. Her family was immediately worried. Her mother and her stepfather flew to Aruba by private jet to find out what was going on. In Natalie's hotel room, her bag and her passport were found, but no sign of her. Some of Natalie's classmates said they last saw her at 1:30 in the morning on May 30th. She was last seen leaving a nightclub called Carlos and Charlie's. Natalie lived in a car of 17-year-old Joran Vandersloot and 2 brothers, 21-year-old Deepak Kalpo and 18-year-old Satish Kalpo. Natalie's parents and 2 Aruban policemen then went to Joran's home to look for Natalie. He initially denied knowing Natalie, but quickly changed his story. He said that they took Natalie to the California lighthouse area of Arashur Beach because she wanted to see sharks. They then dropped her off at 2 a.m. at her hotel. Joran claims had Natalie fell down as she climbed out of the car as she was very drunk. Joran also claims as they were driving away, Natalie was approached by a dark man in a black top, similar to those used by security guards. Joran's story was corroborated by Deepak, who was also in the house. It is not known if the story is true, however, as Natalie was not seen on the nighttime surveillance camera footage of the hotel lobby. It was possible for Natalie to reach her hotel room without using the hotel lobby, so it cannot be determined if she made it back to the hotel that evening or not. Hundreds of volunteers from Aruba and the United States joined in the effort of searching for Natalie. The Aruban government gave thousands of civil servants the day off to participate in a search effort. This included 50 Dutch Marines who conducted an extensive search of the shoreline. Was also raised to provide support and aid to the volunteer search teams. On June 5th, Aruban police arrested Nick John and Abraham Jones on suspicion of kidnapping. The 2 men were former security guards, known for cruising hotels to pick up women. The 2 men were released a few days later, however. On June 9th, Joran Dybak and Satish were all arrested for suspicion of kidnapping and taking the life of Natalie. They were interviewed and all of them changed their stories multiple times, especially Joran. They said that they dropped her off at a hotel and later they said that they left her on a beach. It was just a confusing mess. Despite investigators believing that these men were involved, They had to be let go as there was no physical evidence. A local man told investigators that he saw Joran Deepak and Satish at a small pond near the hotel Natalie was staying in, about an hour after she was last seen. The pond was drained on July 27, 2005, but no signs of Natalie was found in the pond or the surrounding area. Another man claimed he saw a man burying a blonde-haired woman in a landfill on the day Natalie was last seen. The FBI used cadaver dogs in a search at the landfill, but they were not able to find Natalie. Natalie's family offered $175,000 for a safe return. It was later increased to $1 million. As time went on, however, it was changed to $250,000 for any information leading to Natalie's remains. Jordan had a lot of media interviews, including interviews on Fox News in 2006. He then claimed, and after they left Carlos and Charlie's, the four of them went to Joran's home because Natalie wanted to see if he had a big house. Deepak and Satish then dropped off Joran and Natalie on a beach where the two of them stayed until after 3 in the morning. Joran claimed that Satish went to come pick him up and they left Natalie on a beach as they felt she would be able to get back to her hotel on her own. In April 2007, Joran published a book called The ZOG Natalie Holloway, which is Dutch for the case of Natalie Holloway. In a book, he admitted that he had lied to the media and investigators many times regarding the case, but he also maintained his innocence. In January of 2008, a Dutch crime reporter by the name of Peter de Vries claimed he had solved the case. He said that he would explain it all on a Dutch television show, which he did a few weeks later. He showed footage taken from hidden cameras and microphones in a car owned by Patrick van der IEM. In the video, Joran can be seen in a passenger seat smoking weed and confessing that he was involved in exposing of Natalie's body. In the video, Joran claims that he was sitting on the beach of Natalie when she began convulsively shaking and then became unresponsive. He claimed that he attempted to revive her, but of no success. Joran said Audie then called a friend who told him to go home while the friend would dispose of her body. In November 2006, he changed his story once again and claimed Audie had sold Natalie into slavery and that she was taken to Venezuela. In March of 2010, Joran contacted the Holloway family's legal representative. He said Audie would reveal the location of Natalie's body if they gave him $250,000. After contacting the FBI, the family agreed to make the payment. Joran then made up some more lies. On May 30th, 2010, exactly 5 years after Natalie went missing to the day, Stephanie Flores Ramirez was reported missing in Lima, Peru. A few days later, her body was found in a hotel room and was registered on Joran's name. He was arrested and taken to Peru. He then confessed that he took her life. He has said that he had lost his temper when she accessed his laptop without his permission. On January 11th, 2012, he pled guilty to taking Stephanie's life and he was sentenced to 28 years. This shows that he is capable of taking someone's life and made even more people believe that he is responsible for Natalie's disappearance. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.